those. The first one is an old-fashioned youth ministry trick that works. It's very effective and it's very simple. And it simply is the ball toss trick. You go out and get one of those squishy balls, a little Nerf ball. And when you're ready to read from the text, you choose someone and you throw that ball to them and say, okay, Heidi, I want you to read the first paragraph on page 31. Heidi catches the ball. She starts to read. After she reads a paragraph, you might comment on one or two thoughts, and then you say, okay, Heidi, your turn to throw it to somebody else. Or just say toss it. We don't want them throwing the ball. Toss the ball to somebody else. What you find is all of the kids are asking for the ball. They're all like, me, throw it to me, especially her closest friends. They all want the ball. And they don't realize that when they're saying, I want the ball, that they are saying, I volunteer to read the next paragraph. It's the funniest thing. I actually think it's one of the stupidest things that this works, but it does. You will never have to call on a volunteer again. You'll never have to pull teeth to ask someone to read, because the ball takes care of that. It simply is a way of getting them to be more alive, more engaged in the reading of a text. So try that, a very simple device that works. Another technique that you can use is something called the paired interview. And this is where perhaps you have a large chunk of reading that needs to be done. And what you do is then you divide the room into two halves, and you assign one chunk of the reading to one group, the other chunk of the reading to the second group. Have them read it independently and then pair them up. And they interview each other and they ask simple questions about helping the other person to summarize what they've read. Ask them, what was the big idea of the part that you read? What were some key words that were in the part that you read? What are perhaps some of what did you find most interesting in the segment that you read? Is there anything you don't understand? So 3 or 4 simple questions, interview questions. They interview each other, and then you have them report back to the large group, so that now you have the young people not only reading, but doing all of the summarization of the chapter that they're reading. So once again, you're not pulling teeth. It's not your job to explain the chapter. It's their job to explain what they have read, and then you can clarify and fill in the cracks. Okay? A third concept is something that we refer to as a graphic organizer. And a graphic organizer is where you give the young people either a handout with these 4 quadrants on it, or you can write these on the board and just have them take notes on a scrap piece of paper. But the quadrants are basically some of the things I just mentioned before. What are the big ideas in the section they're reading? What are the most interesting ideas they came across? What perhaps are the key words that are in this segment? And then finally, the is referring to, are there any questions that you have? After reading this, is there something you don't understand? A graphic organizer is a good way of having young people do independent reading. So perhaps you might say, so now I'm going to ask you or have you read chapter 3. Here's your graphic organizer. You've got 10 minutes to independently read and summarize that chapter. And then you let them do that independently. You can walk around and make sure that they're on task. But when they're done, you use the graphic organizer to guide your discussion. So you can simply say, okay, so what were some of the big ideas that you saw in this chapter? And once again, the young people are not just sitting there thinking, oh, what was it? They've written it down. They have notes that they're pulling from. And then you can go section by section and have a nice structured conversation about what it is that they were reading. And then finally, the last idea is something called clue cards. And the clue cards are basically where you, as a catechist, look at the chapter ahead of time, and you pull out a number of key words in the chapter. keywords that are going to help them remember and learn the big idea and the concepts that you're teaching. Write each keyword on a small slip of paper or an index card. Make sure you have one keyword for at least every student in the class. If you can get 2 keywords per student, that's great. Distribute those at random, and then begin reading the chapter and tell them, now as you come across one of your keywords, I want you to call timeout, and they get up and they tape their clue word to the board or on a wall, and now you have what we call a word wall. And these become the important concepts that they should learn and should remember. As each of the words or key phrases is being placed up there, you can talk about it, you can expound on it, you can ask some questions about it, and then return to the reading. But the kids are paying closer attention because they need to see if their keyword, their clue word, is coming up. And it's also a good way to tell them to pay close attention, because you can tell them that if their clue word is read and they don't call timeout, perhaps they get a little penalty of some kind, like they have to stand for the next 2 minutes or something that's not cruel and unusual punishment. But something that will get them to feel like it's part of an engaging process of reading.